it was not the economy, it was not the border, it was not abortion rights that the president led with last night. It was Ukraine and the defense of democracy. How did that strike you?
Yeah, Kailey, I mean, I was applauding loudly from my couch. It struck me that it was exactly the right place to start because, this is a president who talks about democracy in America and the connection between democracy in America and what's happening in the world. And democracy, not just for us, not just for Ukraine, but for the world, is hanging in the balance on those battlefields and on the waters around Ukraine.
Pretty remarkable, Evelyn, to learn today, and not that long ago, that the speech was viewed by more than 27.7 million people, an audience that was roughly 18% higher than last year's, according to Nielsen. I'm trying to figure out if this speech makes a difference. He delivered it well. He started with this. It was obviously a point of emphasis for the president. But if not for the lawmakers in the room who are going to wake up this morning feeling likely the same way they did yesterday, are the folks at home the answer here? That they start calling their lawmakers, get some critical mass as the administration hits the road post State of the Union?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, so first, let me just say one more thing about the Ukraine piece and the foreign policy piece. There was a rare moment of unity on that podium, meaning that the majority leader of the House, the senior Republican represented there, was actually agreeing with the president when it comes to Ukraine. So let's hope that that means they'll pass legislation to help Ukraine. Now, to your point, I actually think the reason people were watching this is because, we have elections coming up in not that many months. And so people wanted to see, how does this president do? Looming over all of this has been the question of his age, although, of course, President Trump is around his age, which President Biden also noted last night in his speech. But I think that people came away reassured, and I don't think it was just the public. I think that the people in the room...
Well, I'm just curious, though, Evelyn, maybe I can clarify the question. How does the president seize on that audience? Is that the takeaway here? Because lawmakers are going to think what they are about Ukraine. And we've actually got an updated number now from Nielsen. It was more than 32 million viewers on 14 networks. How does the administration use those numbers to its benefit in the weeks ahead?
Well, I think those are people who are open to hearing an argument from Joe Biden, and that's important. So they're probably independents. They might be Nikki Haley voters. They may be, people that I know who are considering not voting at all, although they have voted for Trump in the past, some of them twice. So I think that people are looking for a reason to decide on a candidate that might not be Donald Trump. So that's certainly one aspect of it. And I think they want to be reassured by this president that he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. People are worried about what's happening in the world. We have the war in Ukraine. We have the war in Gaza. We have uneasy relations, to say the least, between us and China. There are a lot of looming questions about the future of that relationship, the future of the economy, although the economy right now seems to be doing quite well. So I think people are watching because they are assessing the president.
Well, you mentioned the war in Gaza, and of course that was featured in the president's speech as well, specifically his announcement about building a new port on the coast in order to expedite the flow of humanitarian aid in. Evelyn, just let's remind ourselves what the president said yesterday.
I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day.
And of course, Evelyn, that's in addition to aid that is now being airdropped into Gaza, which just began recently. What does it say that the U.S. is having to do this to get aid in? Especially, what does it say of the U.S. relationship with Israel right now?
Yeah, Kailey, I think the president was kind of groping for something to show that he cares about the Palestinian people in Gaza. And ideally, what he really wanted to achieve was a ceasefire so that the Israeli hostages can be released, so that aid can get in on the ground immediately. And this was probably plan B for him. And plan B, unfortunately, isn't going to provide relief to the Palestinians anytime soon. My understanding from talking to senior World Food Program officials is that the people in the northern part of Gaza are, to quote them, within an inch of famine, of starvation. And so this pier and this whole effort to bring in more assistance, while it's of course important and praiseworthy, it's not going to take care of the immediate urgent problem. And it's also going to be placed in the southern part of Gaza, which again won't help the people in the north today or tomorrow or even in months. So, and the other problem, of course, is once you get the food and the medicine and everything into Gaza, onto the port, you still have to get it into the territory. You have to get it safely to people, and that requires cooperation from the Israelis. So I think the most urgent thing, the thing that the administration should have been able to announce, is that they put enough pressure on Israel that the Israelis are escorting convoys and distributing assistance tomorrow, today, really taking action to alleviate and stave off a real starvation crisis.
Well, Evelyn, as Joe Biden warns today that a ceasefire by Ramadan is looking tough, I just wonder how you see this actually getting done. He says that U.S. troops will not be involved. How do you build a temporary pier if it's not wanted and without stepping on land?
Well, you can build this temporary pier. I was in the Pentagon when we talked about doing things like this in the context of removing chemical weapons, chemical material from Syria in the 2013 timeframe, I believe it was. And so we looked at what can the Navy do if we found a place that would be willing to take these chemicals and essentially storehouse them for us. They can do this. It takes time. And again, all you're going to be doing at that point is getting the very important, much needed food and other medicine and et cetera to that pier, but you still have to get it from the pier safely to the people who need it. And so that's the same negotiation that we need to be having right now. And so I think the World Food Program and other humanitarian people who are there on the ground would say, let's just open up the road corridors and get the Israelis to work more aggressively on that.